On a beautiful Saturday afternoon in Chicago, I wanted to play some pickleball. My favorite courts at Grant Park were closed, so I was left looking for an alternative. A friend had mentioned Roosevelt Park, so I looked it up. It was fairly close by bike, so I noted the location, the intersection of Roosevelt and Clark, and set off on my way. Had I used Google Maps to direct me instead of using my mental map, it would have taken about 10 minutes to get there. Instead, it took almost a full hour to find my way into the park. Here's why Roosevelt Park was almost impossible to get to, and why I think these 7 blocks are the most poorly designed in all of Chicago. I was coming from the West Loop, so I figured I would bike east, then south, and wind my way there, no problem. I went east on Jackson, south on Dearborn, and eventually found myself traveling south on State Street, which I knew was slightly east of Clark, so I'd overshot by a little. But I soon hit Roosevelt, so I figured, no problem, I'll just go west until I hit Clark Street, and I'll be right there. So I took a right onto Roosevelt, which is one of the least pleasant roads for anyone outside a car, so I walked my bike on the sidewalk. Soon I found myself here, staring down into the pickleball courts. I figured that I had to be very close to an entrance with a ramp or a staircase or something. But I turned the corner onto Clark and I found this: a dead end, no more sidewalk, and a road that seemed treacherous even for the most adventurous cyclist. So I was forced to continue down Roosevelt, figuring I could double back at some point, find my way to Clark, and find an entrance there. But since this part of South Loop is a nightmarish concoction of waterways, railways, and weird roads, I found myself taking a convoluted 2 mile loop to navigate these and some eternal construction. Using again my pathfinding knowledge, I went south on Wells, figuring I could wind my way over to Clark. However, due to the aforementioned nightmare of waterways, railways, and weird roads, I found myself at a dead end. Looping back up to Polk Street, I finally found myself at South Clark. So I continued down and saw that the nice one way Clark Street had turned into an uninviting 2-way street. I started down the sidewalk and soon found that I was staring at a mix of fence and brick wall. Nowhere along Clark Street was a single entrance to the park. So I doubled back up to Polk again and saw this weird disjointed street thing, which I figured would get me close to where I wanted to go. I continued down this street thing called Plymouth Court until I reached the large overpass that was Roosevelt. I saw nothing, not a single way to go west into the park. I went under the overpass and looked for a back door and saw nothing. After a few minutes of searching, though, I found this narrow pedestrian path between some small apartment buildings, leading me to, finally, Roosevelt Park. As I was leaving, I found the main entrance to the park, which was through this strange winding street called South Park Terrace. South Park Terrace feeds 2 other entrances to the area. There's a second pedestrian only entrance over here, and a car entrance, which I missed the first time around, called West Ninth Street. I'd like to clarify what this means. This means that an entire area that is roughly 7 blocks total has one car entrance and 2 additional pedestrian entrances, all 3 of which are on 2 adjacent sides. This may not seem that bad, but if someone lived here in the subdivision, effectively 1 block from the target, it would take a full 12-minute walk to get there. Or they could do this ridiculous loop to loop around that would take 14 minutes. My understanding of urban planning is that generally grid good and maze bad. So after this whole ordeal, I was left wondering, why on earth is this massive area in urban Chicago designed like a residential golf course subdivision? My theory is that they want to keep out road noise and people that don't live there. Something else I thought was interesting is that developments like this very much encourage the constant use of GPS pathfinding. Like I mentioned previously, had I used Google Maps, it would have directed me exactly where I needed to go. That's not how I prefer to navigate because I like to stare at the world, not my screen. And creating developments where it's frustrating to navigate by way of your own mind encourages reliance on technology. Anyway, thank you for watching and listening to my rant. If any of you have similar examples of nightmarish urban design in Chicago, please leave them in the comments. Thanks.